Good morning, and welcome to our 2026 series of WTH webinar training sessions. We're glad to see so many of you joining us for our second series. My name is Leslie, and I will be your moderator. We invite you to navigate to our website, WTHGIS.com, and click on the banner, which will take you to our webinar menu page, where you can review the topics we are to cover today and on future dates. We're doing something a little different with our first 3 sessions this time, as we plan on breaking down our topics into 3 one-hour sessions. Within each hour, we will be presenting for 40 minutes. During this time, we invite you to post questions in the Q&A tab. We will then use 10 minutes at the end to review any further questions, and then wrap up with a 10-minute break before we return for the next hour. The topic of our first webinar in the series is Think GIS Basic Functions, which we will break down to cover toolbar buttons and map frame features in the first hour, customization within the index and layer settings in the second hour, and lastly, the importance of syncing. If there's anything that isn't making sense to you or you would like more information on, we invite you to post a question in our Q&A tab that you can access in the Teams toolbar above. From there, you can submit a question in the side discussion bar. After we are done here today, you will receive an email that will have 2 things. First is a survey link where we ask that you provide feedback on how we did here today. On that survey will also be a section where you can request more in-depth training on some features we may not have time to cover in today's session. If you would like more information, please leave a brief description of what you would like to review so we can have the appropriate team member reach out to you. The second thing to watch for in that email will be a link to a recording of today's session. We've had some users unable to access the link in the past, so we want to be sure that you know the link will also be available on our website webinar registration page to access at any time, to bookmark and review at your own pace, or to use as a tool when training new employees. Now I'll turn the session over to Jason. Jason is a GIS consultant and customer service tech with over 20 years of experience, specializing in land information and utility work. Go ahead, Jason.
Good morning. So yeah, as Leslie said, I'm one of the service guys, and many of you have probably spoken to me before or met me, over the 23 or some odd years that I've been here. But yeah, today, kind of first session here, we're going to be talking mainly about the toolbar and just some of the ways it can be customized and used. So I guess first off, we're just going to bring up the map and just kind of essentially this toolbar across the top. We're going to kind of just go over that, what the buttons are, what they do, how to customize it to work best for you. And as you see, you may notice that, I've got a ton of buttons across here. You may not have some of those. You may have some of those. You may have different ones that I don't have. It's, like I said, customizable, all along lines of what is going to work for you and what you need. So first off, just kind of going across the top, we do have kind of on most people will have the index. And just click this. You can look up information, everything, and we will kind of get into detail in the second session on this one because there's a lot of things to go over in this particular area. So I'll go ahead and close this for now. Next over, like one that I have is just select feature. And what it does, and say you may or may not use this much, but if I left click, it puts a little question mark on my cursor, and then anything that I click on. So if I just click here, it selects that feature and opens the feature window. And so if I close that, that would be the same as whereas a single click puts information in the information window along the left-hand side. but the double click opens up the feature window. This is essentially kind of a shortcut to a double click. Um, you may not use that a ton if you're kind of in an office setting and using a mouse. Um, I think a lot of people that are kind of in the field on laptops using the touchpad may use that a little more. So being that I'm primarily using a mouse, yeah, I don't use that one all that often, but yeah, but it can come in handy for those that need it. Next over, we kind of get into the navigation tools. First off, kind of the magnifying glass, plus and minus, zoom in, zoom out. The zoom out is just a left click, and it zooms out a certain amount. And that's what it does. That's all that it does. Just, left click, it zooms out. Next over is max view. That will always take you to your default view. And that can be, and we will go over this in a little bit, but that can be reset. So if you need it to, every time I click max view, and for my default view, if you need it a specific area, you can set it for that. Or if you need it for the entire county, you can set it for that. And that will also be, the max view will also be the view that is used when first opening the map. So it will always go to that. So that, very easy to set that, and you can change it around as needed. And it's not going to hurt anything. Next over here, we have the zoom in button. And for this one, it's going to be a little bit different. If I left click, and as you see, you kind of get a window around my cursor. This window is it's going to have kind of the same general dimensions as your viewing screen. And anywhere that I click is going to basically put what's in there in your viewing screen. So if I needed to zoom in here, left click, that is now my viewing area. I can also use my scroll wheel. I'll move over here so you can see it a little better, to resize that window. So I can, use the scroll wheel, scrolling forward, scrolling backwards. If you don't have a scroll wheel, or you're using a laptop with a touchpad, you can use page up and page down on your keyboard. That will do the same thing. But like I said, just zoom into an area that you need, left click, and there you are. Other options for this, like if I go back to max view, takes back to our default. Other options would be just, especially if you're using your mouse, the most common would be just left click and hold. So if we needed to zoom in this area right here, this would be a left click and hold, drag a window. And once kind of whatever I want to see is in that window, release, and it zooms in. So that, like I said, that is probably the most commonly used method, especially if you're using a mouse and you're in the office and everything like that. So max view. So if we needed to zoom in anywhere, left click and hold, drag a window, and you can just keep doing it until you find what you need. Next over is the previous view button. The previous view button will remember the last 6, 7 to 8 views that you have looked up. So if you like left click, it's going to remember all of the zooming in and zooming out that I've been doing. And I can just, keep going in and out, clicking that until now it has run out. But it'll remember if it could go back any farther, it would probably be zoomed way out to where we could see, the whole county. But once it's run out, you know, it doesn't do anything anymore. um, but what that can be used for, or what I use it for the most, I guess would be is sometimes if maybe there's a little lag in the map or anything, and I start zooming in, I may, whereas I said you just kind of left click and hold, left click and hold. If you maybe drag a tiny window and you're going really fast, you may end up doing something like this, where you are zoomed in so far, like we are really close to the ground right now. And if I use my scroll wheel, I can start rolling back. And as you see, we're not getting very far, but I can hit previous view. It's like now we can start seeing the pixels of the aerial photography, hit it again, and we're back. So that can, that's what kind of bails me out whenever I get in a hurry or, release the left click too soon and end up zooming in really close. That's when it comes in handy for me. But it can also, come in handy if you have, done an address lookup and then done another address lookup. And you're like, say, I need to go back to where I just was, as opposed to, typing in the address again, you could just hit previous view and it would take you right back to it. Next over, we have the pan button. And this would, at least for me personally, would be another button that I would say falls in with the, select button here. When if you hover says display, info for the object that you have clicked on. With pan, what this does is if I left click to activate the tool, it's very similar to zoom in that I get a window around my cursor that's the same size as the viewing screen. So with this, anywhere that I left click on the screen is going to make that the center of the viewing screen. So if I was going to, if I needed to pan down the road here, I could just left click on this intersection and it shifted the map to that location. So that is now the center. So if I need to move kind of west down, looks like North Street, I could hit pan, left click here, pan, left click here, and it's just going to keep shifting the map to the west. And again, this comes in handy more for those that aren't using a mouse. If you're using a mouse, what you would do here is, whereas like left click and hold drags the window to zoom in, right click and hold grabs the map and you can just drag it around. So this is going to be, as long as you're using a mouse and everything, much quicker and easier. And if you're using a touchpad on a laptop, you can, hold if you're more, if you're better with the touchpad than I am, then you can, hold the left button and kind of use the mouse or use the touchpad at the same time. And you would get the same thing. So right button and then touchpad would drag the map. Left button and touchpad would zoom in. Oops. And there I go, hitting the scroll wheel instead. And that is one other little handy tool that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about. But if you press and hold the scroll wheel, which I just did on accident, but I guess I can show that to you. If you press and hold the scroll wheel, it changes your cursor to a marker. And you can draw on the map. These lines cannot be saved, but they will show up in prints. So if you're printing out an area for somebody and need to say, hey, check this area, or, we have a problem right here, or, this is the parcel I'm talking about. Yeah, you can just press and hold the scroll wheel and it will change your cursor to a marker and you can put those lines out there. Then from there, just a redraw of the screen, or I can hit clear at the top of the information window, and it's going to get rid of those lines. It would be like, clearing out if you've used the ruler, which we'll get into shortly, or any of the other tools that highlight things, that, you can redraw the screen, and it will wipe those out. So again, if we needed to, do a printout and say, hey, check this parcel out, just press and hold the scroll wheel, circle it. You could, make a print of this area. And then once you're done, clear, and you're back to where you were. So next over here is, we have the layer settings, which again, we will get to in the next session, because it's, again, kind of like the index. There's a lot to go over in that one. But so we'll just keep moving along down the line. Next here we have the ruler for, measure distance. So if I left click, that's going to kind of change my cursor from the arrow to a little hand. And anywhere that I left click, and it's just a left click, I don't have to left click and hold, but it's just one left click, and it kind of anchors that point to the map. So now as I move the cursor, it's stretching out this ruler, and it gives you the length that it gives you the distance of what we're currently measuring. So if that's all we need, I can just left click, anchor the second point. If that's all I need, then I'll right click, clears the cursor of that tool, and it leaves behind that measure line and the distance. We can also, here I'll right click and hold and pan the map down. We can also not just do kind of, I guess you'd say, distance between A and B, just 2 points, but we can left click multiple times. Then right click to finish, and it gives us the total of all of the points that I put out there. And then again, kind of like with the press and hold the scroll wheel, I could just hit clear, or, you may have a redraw button at the top, or I guess the hotkeys on your keyboard would be Alt-R. So all three of those will do exactly the same thing. It will clear your screen. It will redraw the screen. Another feature on the measure tool is, if we had to measure this section of road, I can hit the ruler, and maybe I, start it for, any reason I needed to know how far it is from this house in the center line of the road to the middle of the intersection going down the road. So what I can do is just left click to anchor a point on the road, and then any of, kind of see where the road bends. If I hit S's and Sam on my keyboard, we'll see the vertexes. And those are, sometimes we'll call those snap points. That's basically, as this was being drawn, and this is on every layer, that is where somebody left clicked to anchor a point as they were drawing. So with the ruler, once you activate it, if we needed to start here, what we can do is go to the next vertex. And if we hover over that, you'll see it kind of grabs onto it, and there's a little box around it. If we have that little box, we can left click again, which says basically we grabbed onto that vertex. So now, still using the ruler, if I come to another vertex down the road, you can see the ruler automatically grabs on and attaches itself to that center line so that we can hit left click, right click to finish. And now we know that it's 524.7 feet with what I measured. That is, maybe a little quicker and easier than like if I clear and coming up here and just clicking a bunch of times down the road, which, we can click all these times. Like saying I probably used a different starting point, but we're going to have, 533.5 that time. And then again, clear or redraw to clear your cursor. So, and that can be done, in different ways. One thing to, I guess, pay attention to if you are getting a measurement, if it's a really big area and maybe it crosses other intersections with lines and everything, you may get a time when, I don't know if it will do it here, but if we grab there and then, so it did actually snap on, but it may from time to time come down here and it may choose a different path. Like it may come around there. So you may be trying to measure from here to here and it may loop around some of the parcels. Just pay attention to that, and so that you don't get a bad distance or a measurement, and you can kind of just go from there. And then again, clear or redraw to wipe that out. So the next one to go over, which kind of falls right in line with the measure tool, the ruler, would be this here. Kind of looks like a grid with the corner cut out. This works just like the measure tool. However, if we left click to anchor a point, left click to anchor another point, we get our line. But if we pull the cursor down, we can see it's actually measuring the area. So if I just, click a few times, right click to finish, we have our area. This is 1.2 acres, 52,269 square feet. But yeah, this can be, used for, anything that you need the area on. I know a lot of, from what I've heard, like in the utilities and like highway departments and everything, if they're doing like a resurfacing project, they may say, oh, we need to do, X amount here. They could just kind of come down the road, measure back to the side, get the square footage. And I know there's a kind of an equation they multiply on, 5,779 square feet, and they can, use that to get, depth to help kind of get an idea of the amount of materials needed. But again, we'll hit clear. Wipe that out. And those would be for, the ruler for distance, and then the measure area to get your square footage and square acreage or miles, depending on how big it is. And then along those lines as well, if you do have a parcel that you need just quick information on, you can also double click that parcel, hit the wrench, and hit display feature statistics. That will also give you your square footage, acres, and miles. And then the distance around the perimeter. So for anything that's drawn as an area, you can do that as well. Again, I will hit clear to wipe out the highlight marks. So next over, I have a couple buttons here. First one, mine is just kind of the cursor, an X, Y, and a question mark. Some of you may have that button. Others, it may be a button with a helicopter on it. They are both the same thing. So if I left click to activate that tool, come down, and then anywhere that I click on, it's going to give me the latitude and longitude in 6 different formats down the left-hand side. And this, yeah, anything that you need it for, and then whichever format you need. If you have trouble with that, or just feel free to give me a call. As always, anytime you have maps or questions with the maps, yeah, call in, let us know, and we'll be happy to help. But yeah, just anywhere. I know that a lot of times, especially like 911 and everything, this button will look like a helicopter. I think for kind of lifeline situations, if they need a helicopter to come in, there's I believe, a process they go through that, they could click out in the field, say, yeah, this is an appropriate place they could land a helicopter, and, they can radio in the coordinates, whichever format they need, and the pilot can fly straight there, maybe shave off a little time. Yeah, anything to help. Then the opposite of this, I'll hit clear again to wipe those points out. The opposite of this would be right here. And this is locate a point for the coordinates you enter. So if you have coordinates, or you've gotten some latitude and longitude on your phone, or a GPS, anything, you can enter them here. And it will give you, kind of zoom in and give you the X on the map, kind of just like when we did the lookup here. This tool will put the X on the map of the coordinates that you keyed in. If you, like I said, there are multiple formats. If the coordinates that you're given are in, degrees, minutes, seconds, then you would fill this out here. If they just give you degrees, you would fill out degrees, minutes, and seconds, you would put in zeros. Yeah, if it only gives you degrees and minutes, then the seconds you would just enter zeros. If it's more of like the northing and easting, kind of like just degrees, we would need to switch the format. And so like right here, I'll just choose, just one of the state plane coordinates. And now we have northings and eastings that we can put in. But as always, if you have trouble with this or can't get it to do what you need it to do, give us a call, let us know, and we can help out. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, with the kind of customizing, or the customization of the toolbar, we can kind of set things up in different ways. Whereas I mentioned that many of you will have a redraw button. Redraw, like, as is listed, like under view, like in your kind of your main menu items up here, we have view, redraw. That is going to be the same, like I said, as the clear button. But any of the tools that are up here, like here's pan view, that's the same as pan down here. Even, look up, locate points for coordinate you enter. That's the same as this. These buttons here are essentially hotkeys, or just shortcuts to the tools in these menus. So if there's a tool that you're using quite a bit, like right here under File, we have Save, Synchronize, which synchronizing we'll get into in the third session today. But if you just don't necessarily want to go to File and Save, we could set up a shortcut button here for Save. The hotkeys for that are also, whereas redraw was Alt R for save, it's Alt S. So I know a lot of times when I'm editing and doing a lot of drawing, kind of I had my left thumb on Alt, and I'm drawing things. I'm forever just Alt R, Alt S, Alt R, Alt S. And for those of you that have worked with me on the phone and or in person, doing editing training and everything, yeah, you'll know that I kind of preach the save early and often. Just Alt R, Alt S, and I kind of try to go through that a lot. But with kind of as I was talking about customizing, mentioned the redraw button that many of you have, or a sync button that many of you have. And you see, I don't have a sync button because, yeah, there you do have kind of, I guess, say limited space up here. You can only have so many buttons. And if you ever try to add a button and it just won't add, that means you have, too many. You may look and, maybe there's a button that you don't really need anymore and you could remove it. So the way to do this would be under Setup at the top of your map. So I'll go Setup, Workstation Settings, and then on this menu here, the fourth tab over is the Menu tab. If I click the Menu tab, this is our toolbar buttons. And you see we have a standard and a custom. We have a top and a bottom portion. Any of the standard that, if those are just kind of always going to be there. But if there's one that you don't need, kind of like the one that I said that I don't use that much, kind of the select feature. If I come in here and just uncheck this, so take the check mark away from that button. Now when I close, that button's gone. So I actually just freed up space for another button if I had too many. If I needed to do one that's more custom, I would do Setup, Workstation Settings, Menu tab, and again, if I kind of put the check mark back, the button would come back. But down here in the customizing or the custom toolbar buttons, if I needed to add one, and whereas I mentioned like a sync button or a redraw button, what we would do is add button, and then it pulls up and says, where do you want to add this button from? And because I know that, I know that redraw was under view, and this is the main menu items up here, I'll hit main menu item and hit OK. So now these are the buttons right here, and I know that I want view, hit OK, and there's all the options under view. So if I want redraw, hit OK. This says this is what we're going to add. There's the command to run redraw. This is the default button that we have for it. If that's okay, just hit OK. So it adds that button at the bottom. Hit OK. And we now have a redraw button. So as you see, we do have something highlighted here. I can hit redraw. And it does the same thing as clear. So again, yeah, one more time quickly there. Setup, Workstation Settings, Menu, and maybe I don't need the redraw. Just click to highlight that line, remove button. Are you sure you want to remove it? Yes, I am. And it's gone. So now if I hit OK, that button will disappear. But I could also replace it, add button, main menu item, maybe under file this time. Synchronize button, synchronize files. So this is the default for sync, but maybe that's not the one that I want to use. I know that there's another one that other people have. I'll just click on this, which brings up a list of buttons. And I know like there's the helicopter. So if I didn't want the XY with the question mark, I could choose the helicopter. But I know that towards the bottom, we have an actual button that says sync. So I could click this, hit OK. So it put this in here. So now where we had redraw up here, we're basically going to swap it out. And now it says sync. And now it's a sync button. So if I click this, it's going to close my map and start synchronizing files. The other item that I mentioned was with max view, whereas you can reset that. This is, kind of it's done similarly to the way we did the buttons in that you kind of come up to setup. So if this isn't the view I want as my default, maybe I want to zoom out a little bit. Maybe I want this to be my default. I would come up to setup, and whereas to add buttons and remove buttons, previously I went to workstation settings. This time I'll go to map settings. Under map settings, again, we have quite a few options here, but one option kind of about 2/3 of the way down is max view set. So if I just click this, left click, it says you're about to change your current view, which was this view here. Say, yep. So now if I hit OK, zoom in anywhere, if I hit max view, now it zooms to that extent. And again, there are times that, if you're working in a specific area and on your map and, maybe doing editing or just this is my viewing area and I'm only going to be looking at this for a long time. Yeah, you can change that. It only changes it on your map, doesn't change it for anybody else, isn't going to affect anybody else's map. But yeah, set it to what you need. Yeah, it's all kind of with this part. This portion is total personal preference. And yeah, you could just kind of go from there. And as always, let us know if there are any questions. With that, so we'll just continue on. So it looks like we got about 12 minutes or so. And if anybody does have any questions at any time, feel free to chime in, and Leslie will get those to me. And the next option,
Jason, before we move on, it looks like
Yes.
we've got a couple minutes. Wanted to let folks know we have opened the mics. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question. It looks like we got one here. Let's see here. We might look into this one separately. I think this one is a little more in depth than we're covering.
Okay.
But anybody, if they want to have a question?
Yeah, feel free to chime in if you have a question. Yeah, for those of you that know me, just jump in. I do not mind at all. But yeah, I guess I'll keep going here with the next item. But again, chime in with any questions if you have them. Kind of what I was going to talk about next was this search bar, kind of your search window at the far right of your kind of toolbar. This is for looking up anything you need. And there are some settings that can be tweaked to make it kind of more user-friendly or work better for you. So like if I come in here and just click up there, if I do like 1, 2, it's going to start giving me suggestions. Like right here, I know that, I'm in a little town there. So if I want 12 North Jefferson Street, it's going to zoom right into it. So that kind of saves you from having to type the whole thing out. As you type, and if I do 1, 2, 3, it's going to give me options for, 1, 2, 3, and then further down, it's going to expand it out to 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 2, and just going to kind of give you the best options that it can. You can set this to kind of help you with anything that you need. And I clicked on the parcel there. The way that you kind of adjust this. So if you want it to give you search suggestions for addresses or for parcels or, whatever layer that you're going to be looking up a lot using the search window. It's actually in the layer settings. And then each layer, I'll go to base map layers here because I know that's where my addresses are. So like right here, addresses, and then all the way over, there's a column that says geocode. And if I click in here, right in this search suggestion format, this is where that is set up so that you kind of give this an idea of what you want it to look for. And some layers are set up, like if I click on subdivisions, it just says feature name. And then like here, corporate boundaries, it's not set up at all. So like if you start typing in here, it's not going to really give you any suggestions on, on corporate boundaries. But if we like go to parcels, it's like county area. This is set up, this one for kind of the Indiana 18-digit state number for each parcel. And like if I was to click here, just left click in that window, this is the setup format for this particular tool for this layer. So right now, this one is said, county, area, section, block. This is all the different portions of an 18-digit parcel number. So following this, that is why like down here, 61, 05, 36, if we were to come up here in the search window and do, 61 dash, you see it's already trying to give me suggestions because it's following that format within the search suggestions. And to, if you needed to alter that, we would just click in here. And if, we don't need tax owner name or, you would just remove that. Like we can just highlight that and hit delete. See if I can find my delete button. There it is. So now it would just remove that portion. And if you make a change to that, right below rebuild search index, and it's going to think about it for a second and just rebuild all the features. So now we just took that information out. Other options that you may have is whereas this is giving us parcel numbers, and it's going to look for kind of anything that's in these kind of brackets, those are the fields. So if we wanted to maybe add something to this, but not necessarily have it look at one of the fields, we could also kind of like I'll put my cursor to the side and I may just type in parcels and hit OK. So now if I start typing, oh, well, I just didn't do what I told you needed to do. rebuild search index. So let's let it run through that. So now, we still have 61 dash. It's got all the numbers, and then it has parcels at the end. We do that a lot of times just because parcels is pretty easy. You know what a parcel number is going to look like. But with some of the other layers where you may have multiple, you know, multiple features that have the same number or thing, but they're on different layers, you could always add that in just to give yourself a hint of what that layer, what that data is coming from, like which layer. So that can always be added in as a just kind of like a little hint. Like this is this, and it's on the parcel layer.
Jason, we do have a couple questions that came in.
Okay.
The first one I figured I've got a quick answer for. Someone had asked if there is like a universal standard of coordinates, say like an alarm company would use or request. As of this time, no, it's personal preference based on company, person, and whoever might be requesting. However, there is kind of a movement right now to get a universal standard set in place. And then another question we received is if someone messes around with all the settings and messes things up in the process, is there a reset button that will take them back to the default settings?
Okay. That's that's a very good question.
Good question.
Yeah. So in a lot of cases, yeah, give me a call and or give us a call. We can kind of jump in and kind of help you get things reset. With a lot of it though, like layer settings, if you were to turn things on, off, change things around, maybe add a button, remove a button. If you haven't, say, go on File and Save. If you close your map, and when it says, do you want to save, say no. And it will close the map, and then when you reopen, it should go back to the way it was. If somebody has made changes and saved, yeah, let us know, and we can kind of help you get things set back the way it was. If trying to think, if that is something that maybe happens from time to time, let us know, and what we can do. There's a couple files that are kind of in the ThinkGIS folder that we could always make a copy of and like basically make a backup for you so that if you came in and turns out somebody had tinkered and the buttons are changed, colors are, and you want it back the way it was, let us know and we could use those files, basically copy and replace the out of that backup that we created for you, and it would make your map look the way it used to. So yeah, so we could make a backup and say if that's something that you're kind of nervous of happening, or if you want to play around with these buttons and kind of play around with this, but are afraid of maybe messing something up, which yeah, I wouldn't really worry about it because if you remove buttons or anything like that, it's we can help you put it back. But if you are just kind of nervous about that, feel free to give me a call and we can do a remote session. I can remote in, see your map, and we can get you a backup set up. And we can go over any questions that you have, on customizing the toolbar and anything like that as well.
Speaking of customization, we've got about 1 minute left. Do you want to cover with folks where they can customize the background of their map and the highlight colors? I know I've come across a lot of users who don't realize that that is customizable as well.
Yes. So that was setup and map settings. So where we went in here to set your max view, up at the top, we have background color, highlight color, and highlight color 2. Um, and again, a lot of people use different colors, and different colors show up differently on maps. So I have my primary highlight color as white. So anything that I click on, anything that's highlighted out here is white. Highlight color 2 is for multiple highlights. So what I mean by that is if like right here, I've clicked on a parcel and it highlights white. If I click on another parcel, that parcel highlights white, but what I previously had clicked on, the highlight is still there, but it switches to yellow. That is not the active, feature that is listed over here, or like an address point. That, now we have, this is what you previously clicked on. So that's a way to, I guess you would say, kind of help you if you're trying to find something specific and you're clicking on a lot of things, and you're like, help you keep track of, what did I click on? And I'm here, but I've already checked all of these. But if you move your cursor, like pan or anything, that kind of highlight 2 will go away. So it will stay there until you move the map or use the scroll wheel to kind of scroll in and out slightly. Then, as Leslie said, if I just go to max view, out here in the background, this is where we can do the background color. So if I hit the pull down here, these are all of the different colors. A lot of people go with black on their backgrounds. I know that was what, years ago we used that quite a bit. But now it's getting more into a kind of a lighter background with some different color kind of standards going out. But again, whatever you want the background to be, this is yeah, that's where you would change it. And it's just again, it really is personal preference. Whatever, I know I've seen some people use their background color as white. Um, that might be a little too bright for me, and if I was looking at it all day, I might get a headache. But yeah, it is complete personal preference as to what you like. And again, any questions on that at any time, let me know.
Perfect. I think now's a good time to break away for a little 10-minute break. And we will be right back.
Sounds good.